first tonight is someone who is not with us, but certainly is with us in spirit, and as a sports announcer and a tennis announcer at one time, I would have appreciated being around this man when it was a lot easier to pronounce than Denis Shapovalov, or Felix Auger-Aliassime, or Milos Raonic, or you go on and on and on, because it was a little simpler back then, but it didn't mean that the game did not mean as much. It is a game of love, and this man had an incredible love for the game. And the name may have been a little simpler, but the name was a great name in its time. And before all of those tennis players that I mentioned, he was one of the most prominent in our country. So if you take a look at your video screens, our first inductee tonight is the late Brendan Macken.
It all began in Dublin at the ancient Chaville Tennis Club when James Macken met Margaret Burns when they played against each other. They collected over 50 trophies between them before they married and moved to Canada. Brendan Hubert Macken was born in Montreal on January 21, 1923. Margaret encouraged her children to play tennis, and young Brendan played in a junior program at the Mount Royal Tennis Club.
Going through his trophies, discovered one from when he was 16, so I think it was the early teen years that he started entering tournaments and winning the tournaments. Again, he struggled with his health. When he was 18, 19 years old, he had scarlet fever and rheumatic fever and ended up with a heart murmur. But in those times, there wasn't much for them, so he was told, the doctors told him, go home, be comfortable, you don't have long to live. So after 6 months of bed rest, here was a teenager that they couldn't keep in bed, and so he was back out hitting tennis balls and on the tennis courts and winning tournaments. And it was because of his poor health, he had trouble staying in university, kept withdrawing because of his health, that he ended up in a tournament in Toronto, met some players and coaches from the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, and ended up down there. And that's when his tennis really took off with the team and the coach, Sharby Umbach. He mentioned years and years later, really turning the tide and his career taking off from there.
When Dad played intercollegiate down at William and Mary, he played with some well-known names. Tony Travert, who won Wimbledon, was one of the fellows that Dad traveled around with. And at the time, Pancho Segura was their coach, and Pancho ended up becoming Jimmy Connor's coach. So Dad was involved with quite a few players that went on to do quite well. And I think the level of competition really got him going.
Macken caught the attention of players from Virginia's College of William and Mary when he won the Toronto Cricket Club Invitation Tennis Tournament in 1944. It was a good move for him. Aside from playing tennis, he was class president and chief aide to the school president, which gave him the opportunity to meet visiting prominent figures such as President and First Lady Truman and Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson and his wife. Soon after that, he met Winston Churchill, but more importantly, he met Elizabeth Gillam, his future wife. During his time there, he also coached and taught physical education. In 1946, Brendan and his brother Jim won the Canadian Open men's doubles, and Brendan was ranked Canada's top male tennis player. He faced Kurt Nielsen at Wimbledon. In fact, from 1946 until 1955, Macken ranked top 3 in 9 out of the 10 years, taking Canada's top-ranked male tennis player title in 1948, 1950, and 1952.
Definitely one of the things that I remember him saying the most was that in those days you played tennis for the love of the game. There was no money in it. So you paid your own travel expenses, you paid for your own clothing, your own rackets. So again, if you were playing tournaments on different sides of the country, you were paying for the love of the game. So I remember that to a T. And he was just such a social guy that not so much a saying that I remember him, but win or lose, he was always smiling. He always had a real friendly greeting for someone who had just beaten him or someone he had defeated. So it was kind of that sportsmanlike attitude that I remember from him. Yeah. I think a sign that he was very competitive is in the day there was no such thing as a tiebreaker. So matches went on until somebody won by 2 games. Mm-hmm. So a number of his matches were more than 5 hours long, where he'd be down at one point, up at one point, down at one point, up at one point, but he was determined to win it and to close it out. So one of those matches was the one in his Davis Cup play against Billy Sidwell. And I think the match was 4.5 hours, again, because he was so determined to win.
That particular match was televised by CBC, and my grandmother threw her hat onto the court after Dad won.
Returning to Canada in 1950, he won the Canadian Open men's singles, defeating Henri Rochon in the final. Macken and Lorne Main won the Canadian Open men's doubles in 1951. In 1952, Macken pulled off an upset, defeating Mexican Fernando Lamas in 5 sets. The victory advanced the Canadians to the Davis Cup final. Macken was a Davis Cup member from 1946 until 1952 and in 1954. Macken and his young family moved to Toronto in 1966. He coached at York University, where his teams did exceptionally well, defeating the powerhouse team of the University of Toronto. In 1968, Macken joined Canada's Gordon Trophy team for players over the age of 45. He was inducted into the Canadian Tennis Hall of Fame in 1991 in their inaugural induction year.
No, my dad liked to win. I think the way, if he was in a tournament, he was in it to win, or play his absolute best. But when he played club tennis, which happened in later years, he still wanted to win, but he wanted to make it fun. And he would often play with players that were not as good as him, but he would make the game fun. So he didn't have to hit a winner. He'd try to keep the game going for them. But definitely, I would say he had a very strong competitive spirit.
Macken played tennis well into his 80s. He was inducted onto the Toronto Cricket, Skating and Curling Club Wall of Fame in 2004. In 2010, Brendan and Elizabeth moved to Aurora. Macken was most proud of his wife, their 5 children, and their grandchildren. After spending his last years in Aurora, Brendan Hubert Macken passed away on March 12, 2020.
Hard thing about losing Dad at the beginning of the pandemic was not being able to celebrate his life with a large group. And this is kind of giving us an opportunity to do that, and that makes it all the more special to have him inducted to the Aurora Hall of Fame.
Anyway, Dad, you deserve it. We wish you were here, and we actually think you're smiling at us right now.
And Dad, congratulations on your induction into the Aurora Hall of Fame. I know you would be immensely proud, and that you're up there having a tennis hit with our brother Bren Jr. So all the best to all of you.
And now, in recognition of his achievements in the sport of tennis, we are proud to welcome Mr. Brendan Hubert Macken as part of the 2021 class of inductees into the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame.
Well, what an amazing man, what a life well served and lived. I'd like to call on the presenting sponsor from New Roads Automotive Group, either Jim Van Dusen or Michael Croxon, to come on stage to help with the presentation. We'll get our pages as well up, and I'd like to call upon Nancy and Helen, who you saw in that video, to welcome Brendan Macken into the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. Why don't we get a few pictures? We'll do that first. How about that video? Some of the footage. That's when they used wood rackets too. And they still hit it so hard and so great. What an amazing story. Okay. The official green sweater. Well, Pops would be proud. Once again, our inductee, Brendan Macken, and to honor his legacy.
Hello, my name is Helen Conzelman, and I'm the youngest of Bren Macken's daughters. My sisters decided that I was the best fit to acknowledge Dad's induction here tonight, but I'm not quite sure how that decision was made. As none of us are public speakers, I do believe maybe I got the short straw. So bear with me, I'm quite nervous, I will do the best I can. We would like to thank the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame Committee for honoring our dad, Javed, Stephen, Helena, Alicia, Melanie, Courtney, and all of the other volunteers. You have been so enthusiastic about this event, and Dad would have enjoyed getting to know each and every one of you. So many thanks. Thank you to Josie and Mark Slack, sorry, my apologies, for not taking the time to nominate Dad. He enjoyed every lunch he had with you at the Symposium Cafe, and you always made him feel like a very special customer. So thank you again, and thank you for listening to his stories. Thank you to all the corporate sponsors who make the evening possible. When I heard New Roads Automotive was a specific sponsor for Dad's induction tonight, I decided to find out a bit more about the company. I was surprised to find out that one of the founders of New Roads was Noel Croxon. Well, Dad and Noel Croxon had been fellow members of the North Scarborough Rotary Club back in the 70s and 80s. Dad bought many cars from Noel Croxon, including his last Buick, which he drove until he gave up his license in 2013. I was also sad to learn that Noel passed away in October, so perhaps he and Dad are watching from up above, having a drink together. So a very special thank you to New Roads Automotive. Dad would have been thrilled to be recognized for his success as a tennis player, but he would have been even more excited to be the center of attention again. Dad was a very social guy. As you heard, Dad died when he was 97 years old when he passed away on March 12, 2020. 2 days later, Ontario entered its first COVID lockdown, and so we were unable to host the celebration of his life. This makes tonight even more special, and we thank the town of Aurora for giving us the opportunity to celebrate Dad and share some of his stories. When Dad started playing tennis, men were just beginning to wear shorts instead of wear long pants. Women were finally able to wear skirts above the knee without long stockings. The rackets were made of wood and strung with catgut. Tennis balls were white and came in a cardboard box. So the speed of the game was very different in Dad's era. Winning players had to have a good variety of shots. I'm not sure what Dad's best shots were, whether it was his serve, his ground stroke, his volley, but I do know that he enjoyed winning a point with a little drop shot. Even when he would tell stories of matches that he had played many years before, he would get a little twinkle in his eye when he remembered winning a match, a point, whatever, with a little drop shot. Travel was different in Dad's era as well. Passenger flights were just becoming popular. So Dad and his teammates would often travel by train, bus, or car. In 1947, the College of William and Mary team traveled from Williamsburg, Virginia to Los Angeles, California for the NCAA tournament finals. That trip would have taken days, not just hours. Another trip took Dad and the Davis Cup team down to Mexico City for match play, but my favorite travel story is of Dad getting to Wimbledon, England in 1951. This trip was by steamship. He sailed with fellow Canadians Lauren Main and Henri Rochon aboard a Canadian Pacific Ocean liner, the Empress of Scotland. This was one of the fastest ocean liners of the day, but the trip still took the better part of a week. The boys didn't have much money and would be staying in boarding houses during their trip. They had packed a large smoked ham, which they thought would help them with meals while they were spending time in England. They were very surprised when the owner of the very first boarding house served the entire thing for breakfast the very first morning of their stay. I don't think today's tennis stars have quite the same concerns as they did back then. Dad started playing tennis on the local courts with his brother Jim and his sister Pat while growing up in Westmount, Quebec. At 18 years old, Dad developed scarlet fever and rheumatic fever. He tried to start studying at McGill University 3 years in a row, but was forced to withdraw each time because of poor health. As you heard, the doctors told his parents, make him comfortable, he won't live a long life. But after a lot of bed rest, he was eager to get out on the courts again, and we're glad he did. Tennis took him down to college in Virginia, where he met our mom, Libby Gillen from New Jersey. Again, short of cash, she had a job delivering laundry to her sorority house when she agreed to go out with him. They married in 1950, and very soon 5 children followed. When Dad won the Canadian singles title in 1950, his prize was a fishing rod, which we still have today and has never been used. At the time, there was little prize money in tennis, and Dad now had a family to support. So by 1954, he stopped competing on the international level. He began work as a salesman, first for Seagram's, then for Montreal Buick, and eventually moving to Thornhill and starting his own company in industrial equipment sales. But that doesn't mean he stopped competing, and he continued to play as many club, provincial, and national tournaments as he could, well into his 70s. There were many times we would be sitting at home with the car packed, ready to start a family vacation, and Dad would get into the finals, so our trip would have to wait. It was very hard to cheer for him in those days. Mom and Dad finally downsized to the Ridgewood condo building on John West Way in 2010. Aurora felt like home immediately, and the new condo building provided a new audience for all his tennis stories. If you passed by Mom and Dad sitting on their patio, you weren't getting by without hearing a story. 1, 2, 3, you were there for a while. So on behalf of my sisters, Nancy, Ginny, Peggy, and 4 of his grandchildren that are here tonight, and all the other family members who were unable to attend, we would like to thank you for inducting our dad into the Aurora Sports Hall of Fame. And thank you to the town of Aurora for being such a great place for Mom and Dad to spend their final years. They were really very happy here. And finally, congratulations to Lois, Colin, and Steve. To quote from the Aurora town motto, you're in good company.
Thank you, Helen. It's so funny, you look at the video that they were wearing sweaters like that back then when your dad was playing. I liked, if you just for a moment, the Macken, all the Macken clan, the Macken family, if you could all just wait, hold your applause, everybody. Macken family, come up, stand up. Just want to see you all. Want to see you all? Okay, now sit down. Let's all stand up now for the Macken family. Congratulations.